again, you'll go through everything here, but this is all about AI, and it's the way I rolled it out initially. I know there's some things in here, so that you'll be able to learn. Keep your eyes and ears open. Maybe you can take something away. Clearly, just so you'll know, they're not vendors. Okay, I'm just bringing them in as just kind of an added value to maybe you guys can grab some opportunity out of this. So I will turn it over to Brian, and be ready to roll.
All right. Well, yeah, it was nice to meet Clay. I got connected through McKinney Builders, and he said you guys have a big crew, and there's a lot of interest, at least in how to manage your businesses. Obviously, well, you're all here, taking time out of your day to learn and reconnect, so that says a lot about you. And then he mentioned that obviously technology is a big on everybody's mind, just because things are always changing, and so I wanted to be available to kind of give you guys some thoughts from my end in terms of how maybe you can approach it strategically as business owners and as entrepreneurs. I don't know as much about custom home building as you guys do, but principles apply across different industries. So feel free to interact and ask as many questions as you like along the way. And to that end, I can blabber forever about this stuff, but I'd rather make sure that it's applicable to you. So it'd be helpful if I could get to know a little bit about the room, since I'm a newbie here. How many of you guys have been in your business for more than 20 years? Okay, how about less than 5? How many of you guys have, let's say, less than 10, builds or remodels or whatever per year in terms of your load? Okay. And then let's say, how about more than 20? Okay. And then how many of you guys have 5 or fewer staff in your office to help run the joint? Okay. And how many of you guys have 10 or more? Great. So you're very disparate. Fantastic. So that's awesome. Okay, so a couple other quick questions just about your business, and then we'll jump into it. I've got several slides here. I'll run through, just kind of give some framing, and I want to spend as much time on Q&A as possible. So if I had a magic button on the desk that you could just hit on your way out, and it would solve current frustration in your business. Yeah, okay, I'd love to hear 5 or 6 things, if that's okay, because business is replete. There's all kinds of things, and so technology touches all of it. I'd love to hear. I had a hand here and a hand here. What would be a good solver?
I have a speech issue. I won't say it right. I like the houses, the people doing the house, the house itself, the people, all the things, plumbing, lights, all that stuff, put it all together and do it themselves. So I didn't do it, or the builder to do it, anything like that. I think it'd be take it out for me scenario.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, just offload some of them.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, anybody else on some? What would be some big, like
1 week building permits?
One week.
AI can do it. You give them the plans, you give them the documents, AI runs it through the filter. 5-minute building permit.
100%. It can do it instantaneously. Except that you got to connect into government entities in order to get those things like that. So,
I just got on Steve's time less than 203 days.
all right. So we're going to talk about the realm of like reality. Yeah. But that's a good point. So over time, I do think that there's going to be pressure on even government agencies and entities to have to adopt more of what's done in the private sector. And really, from a business perspective, even the private sector follows sort of the commercial, something like the individual. So if you think about technology and applications and stuff, it's generally what does the consumer experience first, and then that carries over into B2B, and then it eventually carries over into government stuff when they finally adopt after, contracts run out and Doge sets in or whatever. What else?
I would love to be able to just talk to my phone and then have it do what I'm saying.
Hey, okay, that sounds like magic.
Yes.
It's possible. It is possible. So we can talk about a few of how that can happen.
I think if we can leverage all the data we have,
Sure.
as builders,
Yeah.
plans, design, financials.
Mhm.
If AI can help us leverage all the data that Buildertrend just
Right.
holds, it'll be awesome. You can read it.
Good point, okay? I'm gonna try
To
to
be
address
able
those.
to load up a set of plans and just ask, like, in ChatGPT, like, you know, give me a list of all the things I need to order, you know, in
Yeah.
a timeline, you know,
Mhm.
or can you take off?
Those are like, take off,
different
yeah,
things, or if I want to change this, what would happen to the cost of the house? All
Perfect.
sorts of, you know,
Yeah, okay. Yes, ma'am.
manipulation with the plans.
Yes, and to piggyback on hers, like the scheduling, and then load that into the Buildertrend schedule.
Okay. Perfect. How many of you guys use Buildertrend in the room? Okay. How many of you guys have tried it but don't use it? Okay. Half and half. All right. Clay. Yeah. I asked if he said I don't ask. Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you guys for that. I'll try to address those things as we go. If you have a question along the way, let me know, and then I've got time baked in for after the fact. So, all businesses change all the time. The market's always changing. There's new administrations, you know, in government, tariffs that are imposed or regulations that are imposed or lifted, all kinds of things that you have to deal with. And then there's just there's technological advances. There's consumer expectation and everything under the sun. So if you don't keep up, you get left behind. Everybody knows that. That's why you guys are here. A few of the things that I found, you know, searching around before getting up here that would be relevant to you guys are, number one, a scarcity of labor. Maybe you come up on that, maybe you haven't. But there's a lot of projects going on beyond custom home building where maybe some of your teams are, you know, getting pulled out into some of the data centers and other big things that are happening. In general, across industries, there's administrative drag, and there's every, you know, projected measure under the sun. Stanford did some studies on businesses that would be about this size, and it shows that executives, founders, however you want to look at it, can lose up to about 20 hours worth of work, you know, weekly, just from administrative drag, just from inefficiencies in communications, like, man, I wish I could just talk to my phone and let it take off. In waiting on responses from other people, and all types of, you know, trying to find the data, like, gosh, I wish I could just go and I knew where the file was that so-and-so put. And so there's a lot of lost time. I know for you guys, trust matters. I was asking Clay about, you know, what are some of the values and priorities that you guys have, and trust is a big deal because, I mean, people are looking to you to help them build their home where they're going to live, but that's representative of their identity and their family and all those things. And so, and it's a big investment, and so they want to make sure that you're going to do them right. And I know that's why you guys care so much about the vendors and materials you select, and about the client engagement and how you interact with them and the communications you have. And so there's a lot of opportunities for having your interaction with your clients be very high touch. There's a lot of opportunities for you to share information in a non-overwhelming way, even in a systematized or automated way, that would help to encourage and alleviate some of their fears or frustrations. You know, buyer beware and buyer's remorse after they send that first check over, or whatever, after they sign the contract, I've done the wrong thing. And so being able to have some good touch points along the way can really help to smooth out those relationships. I mean, you guys have dealt with enough, you know, people over your years of business to know what the common hiccups are. So trying to figure out ways that you can leverage technology to proactively handle some of those things, and even some of the dumb, boring things, administrative tasks, so that you can then focus more intently on your clients and your customers. And then lastly, technology access. So for the last couple of years, I've been running my own consultancy helping small businesses, but prior to that, for a decade or so, I was at a company called Strategic Treasure, and we're consultants for large multinational corporates doing complex treasury and risk management issues. And so you think about Fortune 500 folks, they have had access to certain levels of technologies, you know, certain machine learning and robotic process automation, and even some artificial intelligence that would be dumb and impossible for anybody that didn't have, you know, $100 million revenue to access. That has changed. It's ubiquitous now. With the rise of these large language models, LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and Grok and all that stuff, those are sort of the consumer front-facing things that we all get to touch and interact with. But there's also these giant engines in the background that you can actually now use it not only to do some of the thinking for you. We've offloaded manual tasks, with tools for a long time, but now we can offload some of the thinking tasks too. But it's also there to help you kind of build those things. So without being a developer, you can have these low or no code type of experiences where you can come up with, without having to know how to, type in any kind of back, portal type stuff. I want to be able to record on my phone. I do it right now. I've got on my phone while I'm driving, because I'm in the car a lot, I can push a button and I'll just ramble just like I'm doing right now. And it'll record that. And then when I connect to Wi-Fi, it uploads that to my Google Drive. And then I've got a little automation that is always listening and it's always running. And as soon as a new file goes into that folder, it says, okay, if this is an MP3, if it's an audio file, then it'll transcribe that, put it into a Google Doc, and then that gets sent over to kind of like ChatGPT, but the back end of that. And it says, okay, are there any tasks in here? If so, it sends it to my ClickUp, which is my project management tool. If it's just a note or something that I need, it can log that in another place. And then I've just got that log. And so, every week I can just throw in the 7 or 8 that I've 30-minute ramble sessions and say, what do I need to focus on this week? And it will review all that for me real quick and kind of give me a prioritize. So that's possible now for free. You don't have to buy anything to do that. You can do that with your phones today. So there's a lot that can be helpful and save your admin folks and save your frustration and things like that. Let's see. All right, so the cost of chasing growth. Since you guys run the gamut of business stages, let's say, or sizes and levels of complexity, you've experienced this already, at least to those of you who kind of go on, to second and third level kind of complexities, that what got you through to the first stage of business does not continue on to stage 2, 3, and 4. And what I mean by that is, you can't scale heroic effort. The 60, 70 hour, weeks when it's just you, and you're wearing every hat, you're on site and in the office at night and stuff like that. You can only do that for so long and so much. And that's when you have to start bringing on team members. And then that's a whole other challenge, because it's one thing for you to know how to do the business and do the work. You know better than anybody. How do you then communicate that to somebody else? If you can't communicate that to a human, sorry to tell you, you're not going to be able to communicate that to a machine for it to do it for you either. So the real big test here, and maybe one of the key takeaways, is it's the delegation test. If you could delegate the tasks that you have in mind to just a competent intern, then you're probably in a good spot to be able to automate some things and leverage technology in a helpful way. If you're, completely bespoke and random and unsystematic, systematic, and you do it different every time, or if it all lives up in your head and it's never been translated over into anybody else, then maybe that's the starting point. We'll talk about that in a second. But so there's this whole paradox of you can be revenue rich and operationally stuck. You can also be revenue rich and profit poor. And so it's great to see that top line number grow, but if you're burning yourself at every end to try to keep up with that, or great, we 3 million to 5 million in 18 months, but all of my employees hate me. They don't sleep at night. They're frustrated. We're having to waste so much margin on change orders or on whatever it's going to be. There's a lot that scaling is great when things are smooth. It's terrible when they're not. And then there's the plateau we just mentioned, the bottleneck. You guys have all experienced that, or you will if you haven't. And then that whole shift in mindset to more work doesn't necessarily mean better results. And so I know you guys care about quality. I know you want to grow your businesses. I know you want to actually have a life, see your families, those kind of things. And so being able to think in systems is sort of the next iteration. So that's really it. So moving from you as the founder being the bottleneck over into an architect of your business. You've heard the old adage, don't work in your business, work on your business. That kind of applies here. And so I want you to think about it this way. I've been married for 12 years, and before I got married, I had someone give me the advice. They said marriage is a great amplifier. If you're kind of a jerk when you're single, you're going to be a super big jerk when you're married. If you're a little bit selfish, you'll be a lot selfish. All those kind of things. And technology is like that too. So if your business is a little bit messy right now, it can be a lot messy when you push on the gas. If it's in really good order, then it can continue on in that way. And so before you think about automating things, before you think about doing all the magic buttons with technology, really it's this process I work through for all of my clients, whether it's Visa and MasterCard, where they're building out new systems, or TD Bank or JP Morgan, or whether it's small business down the street. And so, make your current processes visible and repeatable. Use a rigorous framework to eliminate risk. We'll talk about that, the Elon Musk algorithm. And then, and only then, automate the right parts of that optimized process. So, first step, systematize. There we go. Maybe you guys heard the process maps, business process maps. You have them in your head if you don't have them on paper. I don't think having them on paper is all that useful because nobody's going to look at that folder and nobody cares. But being able to put them in a place where workflows happen, being able to map out what it is that you or your team actually does day by day, week by week, to make sure that it doesn't get dropped, to make sure that it's not a waste. Really, the whole question is who does what, when. And when you're mapping out your business, it's helpful rather than to think about, well, Sally at the desk or Jason out in the field or whatever. Think about it in terms of roles first. So my HR role or my finance role or my whatever it's going to be, my field rep role, those kind of things, or project manager, and then you can assign names to them. So what's really helpful is you can go home tonight and do this, and you sketch it out while I'm talking if it's boring, and just think about what are the different roles maybe that you're taking on. I mean, you probably have 3, 4, 5, maybe 10, 12 hats that you're wearing as founders or as owners. Some of you have moved on down and you've offloaded that onto other people, and so that feels like, I'm past that. But now your job is to make sure that the people you've assigned that and delegated that to, are as efficient as you could be when you were doing it. So I think it's kind of a harder task in that regard. So think about those roles. What is it that they do? And then, and really the goal here is just to understand your as-is process. So don't try to be impressive to yourself or lie to yourself. Just what is it that we actually do? Is it those permits? I'd love to have a week, 1 week out permit or whatever like that, but it's taking 18 months or whatever it's going to be. So what are the bottlenecks in that process? How can I work to eliminate that bottleneck? And I'll just side note, if any of you guys, some people read, some people don't. So okay, if any of you guys are readers, there's a book that I read back in college. It stuck with me. I think about it all the time. Eliyahu Goldratt. He wrote a book called The Goal, and it's just a story. It's like a parable, a business parable or fable or whatever you call it. And it's this fella in a production environment, and it kind of talks through that idea of the theory of constraints, finding bottlenecks, what's happening in the whole manufacturing process, and how can I, if I free up this one, where do we get stuck next? That's the prioritization. Now free up that one, where do we get stuck next? And that's something that you're going to experience too when you start thinking about your processes in your business. So after you systematize things and you know what you've got going on, then it's your job to optimize. And this is the Elon Musk algorithm. He says when he has not followed it, he lands in production hell. And so if you try to automate too fast, no bueno. If you're buying inefficiently and you automate that, then you just lost a lot of money. And so the sort of the 5 steps that he suggests we follow as we ruthlessly deconstruct your processes is, first off, question every requirement. Why are we even doing this in the first place? Is this necessary? Is this redundant? Is this stupid? Do we have that data elsewhere, to your point, Sahil? And then, okay, on the parts that are dumb, let's delete those. And he would even say, delete so much in what you're currently doing that you have to add back at least 10%. If not, you weren't, rigorous enough. And then what you have left afterwards is where you're optimizing those remaining flows. And then he says, accelerate cycle time. Do it as fast as you can. How fast can we get that to be done? And what breaks there is what's going to, let you know if you've optimized well enough or not. That's actually one of the questions I start with when I'm doing discovery calls with new clients is, if we let's say somebody said, okay, we do 10 houses a year, or if you did 20 houses next year, what would break? If you doubled your throughput, if you doubled your demand, what in your business would break? That's really a helpful place to look. We don't have funding for it, or we don't have the manpower on the team, or we don't have whatever it is. That tells you sort of a priority of where to start. And then lastly, and only lastly, do you automate the processes that you need that can be automated, and not everything can be. even with all the cool AI and agentic technologies where you can tell it to do something and make it start thinking for you, which we can talk a little bit about that in a minute. Even then, it's helpful to have a human in the loop, at least for the some of the client-facing stuff that you need to have, because you guys are in a high-trust industry. That matters. So, so you want to make sure that you automate what's the right stuff and focus where you need to on the high-value stuff. So putting it into practice, let's see. I don't have time to have. Okay, these are just some examples. Could be anything. I don't really know your businesses that well, so this is me assuming stuff. But maybe if you're still signing off on every purchase, even small ones, how could you empower your PMs to speed up their job site decisions? Now, in order to do that, you're gonna have to think. How would you make those decisions? Get your little mental algorithm out, and then share it with somebody and make sure they know it. Train them to think like you think. Keeping paper copies of docs stored in the accounting system. This is what you mentioned. Like, so we've got data everywhere. Are we redundant in how we capture it and how we store it? Are there silos where my accounting department understands cash flow right now, but do my PMs out on the field? Does everybody in my business understand how their tasks today and the rest of the week impact our bottom line? If they don't, A, they're not going to be motivated. B, they might be working on the wrong things. C, you might not even need them. And so you really need to think about how is everybody, and not everybody's a salesman, so they're not going to directly connect to revenue, but those back office folks that are making it easier for your salesman to get out there and actually get more reps in, that's important. And so everybody needs to have a connection to the bottom line of your business. Otherwise, why are they even there? What are you even doing? And so you can think through sort of each one of those things. A case study with McKinney. McKinney is apparently very engaged here in CBUSA, and good on them. It sounds like a great program, and Mr. Clay sounds like an awesome dude. And so I was asked by a friend who worked for McKinney to come in and maybe help them do some of their processing. Some of you guys are on Buildertrend, some of you are not. Some of you who are on Buildertrend already have a lot of your invoices in that ERP, and so maybe your quarterly reporting to CBUSA is super simple, I don't know, but not everybody's on that. And some folks have really high volume invoices to process, and so when you got around 1,000 a quarter, that's a lot of work on the admin staff. And so their problem was that they had invoices. They got some guys in the field who really like to handwritten notes, and here's a stack of papers, Miss Claudia, and you deal with that. And then there's others who are sending their emails and they've got PDFs and it's digitized and everywhere in between. And so then if each quarter you need to process all of those out into the manufacturers, the products by SKU, or the distributors, or whatever it is in order to file in the CBUSA portal, then that makes it difficult. There's a lot of flipping papers and a lot of things that have to. So our job there was just to digitize that. And the result is we saved them a lot of work. I'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. And so not only can you, when you do things like that, save time and save headache and frustration so your staff don't quit, but you can also reduce risk, improve the quality of the output. So I think it was a 17% increase in the number of SKUs reported when we put the system in versus the manual thing, because it's just easy to miss stuff when you're having to flip back through papers and stuff like that. And so this may not be an example for you, but you've got other examples like this. So this is what their system looks like in one of those no-code tools, actually. So this is called Make.com, formerly Integromat, but there's all kinds of tools out there. N8N or Zapier, you may have heard of, different things, that you can actually come in without knowing really much of anything other than how to run your business and say, all right, what is it that I actually need to do? So in this scenario, files, we had to get all of those files either scanned if they were, just had been printed out and written on, or just the email attachments dropped into a file. So we use Dropbox, and it's just simple drag and drop. So those fall in. We get a link to that file and convert it over through a little tool that kind of makes a picture of it. And so one of the great things that LLMs, these large language models, AI tools can do now, they're called multimodal. So not only can they read code, not only can they read text, like our language talking now, they can read images, it can read audio files, like I mentioned, transcribing things, it can read videos, and it can kind of see all of those different things. And so So we make a picture of every one of those invoices so that Bob from project whatever has his handwriting there, and they can capture not only the typed out data that's there, but also, yeah, let's not do this, or Claudia needs to file this, or whatever. And all of that then gets digitized through this little nugget right here. That's actually OpenAI, so ChatGPT's back in brain, reading those files, and then it turns it into something called JSON. Doesn't really matter, and it iterates through every item. So if I've got one invoice and it's got 10 items, this has to loop through 10 different times for each of those SKUs, and it puts it into a Google Sheet, or it can do it into whatever, just any kind of database. And then we wait that 3 seconds, and then we move it from the main folder over into a process folder so we know it's done, and then it just keeps cycling through. And you can do it every night so that at the end of the day it's just done. You never have to think about it. Not only does that save Claudia a lot of headaches, but it also gives McKinney's back-end finance team, and now they've got all this stuff digitized, I can just search and sort through so we can say, what all has James Hardy material in there? All right, and now we've got another cycle that kind of runs through that conversion process to make sure that it's soffits and siding or whatever it is for the, they've got a little conversion tool in that PDF to do. But you can also ask it questions and help to just inform, like Sahil mentioned, it's more data that can help you inform the business decisions that you make. So how are you forecasting your cash flow? How are you, how many days outstanding are your invoices? Are you having to float something for another month or two on your line of credit and you're paying interest on that? So that all that stuff creeps up in cost. If somebody owes you something, do you have the follow-ups automated? Do you have an email that goes out day 5, day 7, day 9? Yeah. And so that you don't think about it anymore, it just happens. And that can, if you could get your invoices paid 30 days faster, and if you could get 10 or 15% more of them done, then I don't know how many dropped for you guys or whatever, but that's margin. And that's not like a new investment, that's just margin. You keep every dollar of that because there's no more work. And if you're paying cents on the dollar for a machine to do that instead of one of your staff members, then you're saving that too in terms of their time. So that's just an example.
Ask a question.
Sure.
So I was in a presentation earlier today about a builder that we know is using AI for a lot of different things, a lot of digital assistants and agents.
Yes, sir.
The comment that was made during that presentation was that the image reading is good but not great. So there's an error rate built in with. So what kind of sampling or auditing do you have to do to make sure you're not messing up a certain amount of the checks that you're cutting to your vendors, that kind of thing?
That's a great question. So let me address it from the tech side and then from a practical how do you deal with it side. So demystify AI for a minute, like it's not magic. It doesn't actually think for you. There's no singularity. It's not going to take over, whatever, human nature and that stuff. All that's crap. It is just a probability prediction engine. So ChatGPT or OpenAI has gone out and consumed every amount of data that it could, every public and some privately available. I think they're getting in trouble for, but all the digital stuff they can soak up, and then that becomes sort of the basis on which they predict. Maybe you've heard announcements or anything if you're nerdy and follow or whatever, like the different weights. Each model has a different set of weights, and so it'll put weights on certain data sets that it learned from or whatever, and so that it gets smarter and more accurate over time. And so today's AI is way better than it was 2 years ago. 2 years from now, it'll be way better than it is today. But it's always just, if I say, Little Miss Muffet sat on it's going to predict, I've read that 7,000 times, and so I bet what the next word's going to be is this. And that's how those tokenization and the predictions happen. Same is true on images. It scans through a ton of different images, and it thinks, all right, what does this mean, and what does that relate to? And so in terms of how much can you trust it, there's a scale. And actually, where you don't see it when you log into ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever it is you use, on the back end, when you're building automations or these agents for function and workflow, it has a number of different settings that you can use. So temperature settings, so 1.1, anywhere in between, and essentially it says, am I going to let it be creative in what it comes back with, or am I going to make it super rigid? And so there's a dial, more or less, and yet when you're building things out, you do have to iterate and test and make sure how accurate is this. Done rightly, it's orders of magnitude more accurate than an accountant But done wrongly, it's, give it to your kid. What would they come back with? And so it just depends on, kind of how much information you feed it, and then also, you guys have experienced this just in your chat tools or when you go in. There's a concept that'd be worth you understanding called context engineering. So again, think about it in terms of probability. So if I go to ChatGPT and say, how can I make my business better? It's going to come back with just a bunch of vague generalities about business in general. But if I say, ChatGPT, take on the role of a small to mid-sized business in Metro Atlanta in 2026 that does 24 homes a year, has this many staff members, it runs on these systems, these whatever. Now all of a sudden when I say how can I, it's gonna narrow that window down of accuracy a whole lot, and so that's kind of how, even in the scenario up there, you can't see it. This is just a picture, but if I were to blow this up, there is a multi-thousand word prompt that I've kind of put together to say, I want you to look for all of this types of information. Here's what you're going to find and see. I write out something called a JSON. I just dropped JavaScript object notation, but essentially it's just buckets for it to put stuff in. You're looking for an invoice number, and that might look like this, or this, but it should have invoice or INV or something on it, typically at the top of the page. And then so when you find that, put that in invoice, date, name, SKU, whatever, quantity, and all those kind of things. And so I've given it buckets with definitions for it to put that information into. So that way it can take unstructured data and structure it. And then that's how we transfer it over into a database so you can do stuff with it. So that sounds overwhelming. Step 3, after you systematize your business, which you guys already have done, I mean, you already have systems in place. That's the thing. You are working off of systems in your business today, whether you've written them out or told them out loud to anybody or not. So the question is, what are our systems? Because the output that you currently have is the fruit of the systems that you currently have. And so think about those, figure out what's working and what's not working, and update them, optimize them. And then, for the things that you can, let's automate, but think about it in a crawl, walk, run. And so I wanted to just mention, how many of you guys use Microsoft 365 in terms of your email system, okay? How many of you guys use Google Workspace? All right, so that's not everybody. I mean, maybe there's some individual folks that do other things, but these tools actually have, you don't have to go and buy something special. They already have a ton built in. And I'll give you an example. It's not in the home building industry, but how do you need me to quit?
Maybe 15 minutes.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, good. Talk for a lot. Okay. So I just finished up a project with a healthcare company out of Ohio, Offer Health. They're in this really cool niche where they provide sort of arrangement, connection with doctor, anesthesiologists, nurses or paramedics in the field, and medical equipment for underprivileged child dental procedures. So they go and find dentist offices that are going to do surgeries, help them get all the paperwork together, processed so that they can be paid for and dealt with. Make sure they've got a stacked case day with 5 or more operations that can happen in that, and then they marry that with an anesthesiologist, and they bring medics and all that kind of stuff out. So that's one thing. That's what they do. Well, they have a logistics crew that has to manage all of the emergency medical kits that each paramedic has. They have to make sure that they stay in, they're not expired. If they get used, they have to log every single thing for the Board of Pharmacy's audits and all that kind of stuff. And these guys just have a piece of paper where they've just been writing it down and leaving it in the kit. And so they did not have what we would call a single source of truth. Somebody in the back office couldn't say, kit number 38047 has this right now, what do we need? They just had to rely on text or emails or Teams messages or whatever and hope that it all got collected right and the orders were put so that someone out in the field doesn't need something and then not have it. And so with Microsoft 365, the plain old thing that all of you guys use, there are tools that they have available called like their Power Suite, so Power Automate and Power Apps. And so we built a little app for them to be able to, because all of them have an iPad out there in the field, just be able to quickly take a picture, scan what's there, type in if they have a need, if they did something used, they can sign it on the thing. All of auditing, all of the logging, all that kind of stuff is just taken care of without having to worry about losing papers or any of that kind of stuff. And everyone that needs to get notified gets notified automatically. Don't have to think about it. Did I really do that or not? It's in that database. It's in that file. So you can just think about all of the facets of your business that require communication, interaction between the field and the home office, between whatever, data collection, organization. You have a lot of tools that you can leverage by itself. Even on the just frustrating, like, sort through my inbox front. If you're comfortable with it, not everybody is, I'm not, but if you're comfortable with it, there's nothing wrong with it if you are. You can let Copilot run your inbox, and you can just say what's happening, and you can kind of tell it who do I need to respond to today, and it'll just read. It's already got the data anyway, so it's no big deal. But just read through all of your stuff and say what's junk, what's not. Like, inboxes are going to get cleaned up a lot in the next 15 months because Google Gmail just kind of released this new AI inbox piece. All the stupid subscriptions and stuff that you hate, you never deal with. Like, it'll get read by a robot, and a pretty smart one, and say, this is an actual person trying to reach out to you, or this is not. And leave this alone, whatever. And you can train it over time based off of, no, this is bad, this is whatever, and it'll get smarter. But so anyway, all I say is just start low. Start where you're at. There's a lot that you can do with what you have. Next would be some of the low to no cost and low code stuff. So like a Make.com subscription might be like $10 a month, and you could, candidly, I lived before AI and before tools. I'm 42, so I was one of those guys that grew up before the internet and then was also African. Everybody else is internet native or internet ignorant, and so I've got a foot on each path. Now I remember what it's like to not have. I can probably get comfortably now 70 or 80 hours worth of work done in a 40-hour or less work week. Now, because I've, over the last couple of years, built up all of my little systems and tools, so I'm not having to loop through that dumb stuff. That takes a while, it doesn't happen overnight. But the aggregate collection of time saved, frustration saved, headache saved, mental bandwidth. I'm about to start a longer-term project with one of the restaurants here. Their back-end platform team, their developers, they want them to be able to focus on what they're doing to make sure everything works. And so they have this concept of cognitive load. So how can they create a platform of tools that they can just use without having to think about it? How do I have to go and procure server space or all this kind of stuff? And so their platform team acts as a service inside to their developers to make sure that it's just smooth and streamlined. You guys get to do that too with your clients, and even with your staff members. And then lastly, way downstream would be, all right, you can invest in some custom solutions if you need to. And there are some things that are out of the box. I don't know much about your industry. I Googled a little bit. You could probably do that too. That says, like, I think open space AI, have you heard of that? That's something, where they go and take pictures, and so you can go on-site audit, and it maps to it, and it reads those pictures and tells you what's there. So it can help you with some of your, chargebacks or your, complaints or anything that you might have to pay if you've done something wrong. But you're like, oh, I got. It took 10 minutes on site, and now I've got image proof, time stamped, and I know that was not the case, so we're covered. So there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do in field and in back office. Okay, so this is my little profit building wheel, but just think about it. All Strands is the name of my company. Sorry I didn't introduce myself. I'm Brian from All Strands. But after working with sort of the Fortune 500 folks and seeing how they, at the enterprise level, systematized stuff, a couple of years ago I left that world and started in the small and mid-sized businesses and kind of came up with what are the common functions of a business that's true across industries that people need to think about and focus on. All Strands comes from King Solomon in Ecclesiastes. He says, two are better than one, and a cord of three strands is not easily broken. So the name comes from, I think, that if you get all of the different parts of your business working together in a unified and integrated way, it's greater than the sum of the parts. It's true of your teams, it's true of your systems, it's true of everything. And so the 5 core functions of a business are marketing, sales, customer or client success, however you name them, operations, and then management. And there's like 40 different elements underneath that. But if you start looking through each one of those things and say, okay, how are we doing here? Is this efficient? Is this not efficient? Is this working? Is this not working? What's the fruit of each one of these parts of my business? Then to the degree that all gets optimized, it's working together. The handoff from marketing to sales works. They didn't, lock. Sales promises the world and operations delivers, a fraction of it or whatever, like making sure that it's all aligned. Then you're going to have a profitable business. It advances the health, growth, and worth of your business. And I know that a lot of you guys are either multi-generational or aspiring to multi-generational businesses. Like, hey, 20 years from now, I want people to still know my company and have a good name and all those kind of things. And so you want to think about it from, even if you're not going to sell your business. If any of you guys have, Michael Gerber, his ebook Myth, or the E-Myth from long ago, sort of one of those classics in business. And he talks about, I think he was at a group in Chicago or something, a bunch of MBA students, and it was the guy who, Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's, and he said to all these MBAs, what kind of business am I in? And they were like, you're in the burger business. And he was like, not at all, I'm in the real estate business. The burgers just pay the way. I think that at the time, it was still true. McDonald's had more high value, intercity, whatever, real estate around the world than the Catholic Church. Like, it's just huge footprint, and it was all bought on the backs of burgers. But he was thinking about his business from the point of view of a system, and he had it so that no matter where I go, if I go into McDonald's in Georgia or in California or in Sudan, I'm going to have that same consistent experience. And you guys kind of have that perspective too. Each one of my builds needs to have the same consistent experience. If my staff are having to rethink how to invent the wheel every single time, there's this huge cognitive load, they're way inefficient. How can I even have a reputation if every single person interacts with me in a different way? And so your business should have that kind of, so even if you're not trying to sell your business, because his whole thing was, who's my customer? What business am I in? He was in not the burger business, but the real estate business. Who was his customer? Not the guy who's buying the burgers. It was his franchisees. They were the ones. So he was trying to give them a business in a box. So all you got to do is buy it and run it. And that's kind of the way you need to think about it too, even if you're going to have this business in your family name for 100 years. So, well, where do you start? You're going to eat an elephant, right? And so don't boil the ocean, just open the tap. Pick one process, whatever that is. I don't know what that is for you. Change orders or any of these things that were frustrations that were mentioned. How do we deal with those today? Is that the best way? If not, how can we fix it? And then what part of that can we leverage technology for to make it simpler and easier? And that's it. It doesn't have to be fancy. Boring tools are great. You guys are builders, so I thought that was clever. Great things are built brick by brick. And then, lastly, so here's just, you all have your own footprint in the market. In some ways, you're competitors, but in other ways, you're not. You're not building commodities. You're building homes for people to live in. And so, what is it about the experience that they have with your business that is unique, valuable, meaningful? Why do people come back to you? Why do they refer to their friends and family? So you need to take care of your business. So in the future is going to belong to the builders with the best systems. It's just what it is. Things are changing. If you're not keeping up, other people will. And so the guy down the street, if he can do the same work in 60% of the time at 40% of the cost, he's going to be able to shake more hands and kiss more babies and get more business, and he's just going to win. And so, so think through how you can increase your profitability, grow smoothly without the clunky chaos, weather different markets because you've got the margin to do so, and then ultimately get that freedom back. So, cliche but true, work on your business, not in it. And yeah, what questions can I answer while I'm here in 4 minutes before my time's up?
Have you found a way to get data out of Buildertrend?
Say that again?
Have you found an actual way?
I haven't been able to get access to it yet. We talked on the, we can connect, and if somebody wants to let me play around with it. They don't have a public API, so that is what it is. I think I think you probably have to capture it on the input. So data's getting into Buildertrend. So it can just be captured and sent to different places. So you can have your own collection. It can have its own collection. Leverage it for the things that it's good at. and then you've got access to it too on the side. Yes, ma'am?
Does anything exist yet that can track like code for different states and regions, and like you take a 360 camera, take a picture, and it's like, hey, you're missing a hurricane clip here, or you're missing a stud here. It's
Sure.
not 16 inches on
Good question.
center or whatever.
So I will say, in theory, I'm sure that it exists or can pretty easily exist, since I'm ignorant of the building space. I don't know how the codes vary by state, by county, by all that kind of stuff. But really, it's just an information. So if those things exist somewhere, and you can download the codes from the government office or whatever like that, then you can create that in something that's called essentially. So you mentioned agents, or whatever. I'll give a 2 minutes spiel on that. So forever we've had if this then that robotic process automation, where you're telling it when this when an invoice with 9 digits comes in and a dash in the fourth and whatever, then do this with that. That's easy enough, but most data in the world doesn't exist that way. 95% of it's unstructured, not structured. And so now we've got some little thinking brains that can help to kind of bring structure into that. So we've got pure automation, and then now with these LLMs and their access to it, they're so cheap. We've got intelligent automation, where you can have steps along the way that require some thinking, but it's still basically a tool, like do this, and the output is what I'm a predictable output. And then there's agents, where it's more like you have an agent is a thinking machine that has tools. And so for instance, in marketing or something, I might say, well, I'll do this for like sales enablement. One of my clients was out of Texas. They were a leadership consultancy for CFOs of mid-market private equity-backed companies. Okay, so they apparently in that world, once private equity comes in, the finance role shifts a lot, and they have a lot of different expectations, and they have to act faster and do different things. And so there's this whole kind of learning curve, and they either have to fire or rehire people in that role to make sure that they do what they need to do to get the revenue back from those investors. And so anyway, so they were there to help in that transition. And so they had, for sales enablement, like before you take a call with somebody that's going to come in, there's a lot of back end, like let's look up that dude's LinkedIn, let's Google their company and what their history's been, if there's any news that's happened or like that. So you can create tools that will say, okay, a research tool, a LinkedIn scraping tool that gets the data off that profile, an email tool, a CRM tool that says, do I have any history with them in my Salesforce instance or whatever CRM you might use that says, Bob has talked to them last week about whatever. I want to make sure that, and so then it brings all that in. So if I have a call with John Smith at whatever company next week, it's going to look at my calendar each weekend, and it's going to say, okay, who's this with, and it's going to fire off. I need to check first my CRM. What do I know about him already? If I don't know anything, then I need to fire off the research engine. Is he on LinkedIn? Let me fire that off and get that and pull that together. And so you have like a node that kind of runs those different tools instead of a person. But it knows directionally what to do, but you're not telling it exactly what's the best thing. So it will first say, all right, Brian's got a meeting with John Smith. Does John Smith exist in our CRM? If no, I need to research John Smith in his company. If yes, what did we say with him last time? What did we already know? So you can, agents just kind of it's just one level up of giving it options. And so it's a brain that works for you. So back to your question, 100% doable. It's just data being fed in. It just has to have a key or a standard to scrub up against to know by what standard, and then data to say whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And it's really just how would you supply and instruct a smart intern to do the task you're looking to do. So that's possible. Anything else?
What are you using for the dictation?
For me, so you can use just about anything. I use, I've got an Android, so sorry for Apple guys, but I know it's like a thing. Easy Voice Recorder Pro, that little button. And so I just, like I am currently talking to the CBUSA group and a bunch of different stuff. And so then I've saved that, and when I connect to a Wi-Fi source or whatever like that, that'll upload to my Gmail, and I'll actually get a little once that transcription is done and it's done its little job, I've got a bot using Telegram. It just texts me and says, it's done, here's a link to the long file, and here's a quick summary. That makes sense.
So you don't have proprietary software, it's just utilizing.
I'm a nobody.
You
Yeah.
have solutions.
You just make it for whatever you need. Yeah.
Steve, do you use Buildertrend's like input and invoices, the AI thing that puts it in for you? So you got it?
I've used it.
I don't like it. It
I
takes
didn't like
forever.
it. It's like, I was like,
I can
don't
input
need
it
all the
myself.
detail on this, like.
Yeah, and I put it in quicker myself.
We use Adaptive and they have it and it's amazing.
Well, so if you go to input a bill in Buildertrend, on the right side now it pops up like AI, and you just drop the PDF in there, and it automatically fills out like the title.
Yes, that's what
But-
that's what
but if
I'm like, I don't need all.
It
the
puts in too
detail.
much detail and it takes way too long.
Yeah.
Ours is.
It's like I can literally input it faster than it.
I just
does.
copy bills and then just change it.
I was just curious, I figured you were using it, but if you're doing it all PO based, so.
Just a quick question for you. Do you strictly AI or do you dabble into like ClickUp and Asana and like?
I use ClickUp personally, it's just easier for
Do
me.
you set up like workflows for companies?
Sure, yeah, it's, my background is more in like a fractional COO that can leverage tech if need be or whatever, but,
What does a consultation rate look like?
free to start, just to get a call and see what you're looking for, and then it just depends what you need. A lot, not really.
Years and years.
No, so like the goal is always like, and this is not true for just me. You guys should really think about this in terms of your employees. I'm not gonna do it. If you were asking me, I would tell you that you should think about your employees as whatever you're spending on an employee, whether that's fractional or on staff or like that. You should really get 4x or more back in top line revenue from them. So if you're paying somebody $100,000, you better be getting $400,000 in revenue back from their input. So that your business would, just because there's so much obviously additional costs associated with that, lag time, training time, turnover time. If you just map it out, I mean, you can probably break even at 3, 4 is profitable, 5 is best. So that's kind of like, so that's how I price things. So if someone comes and says, hey, we have a problem with this, and we figure out how much is that costing me. And if it's costing you $20,000 and I can do it for 4, then that's 5x. Win-win. Yeah.
Thanks, Buck.
Yep.